I took a picture of you with that photograph in our lobby. Now, I have a little story to tell before we go forward. So, the chairman of ANI was covering the Dalai Lama coming in at that stage.
Oh.
Yes. So those pictures, that picture which you saw, so he was covering and there were like 3-4 other photographers.
Yes.
So they were told that this is where the Dalai Lama will be coming in.
Yeah.
So he was working for something called the Viz News, which then got bought over by today's Reuters. So when he was taking the picture, he took the picture of the Dalai Lama walking in with some other monks, and along with that, the AP photographer, Associated Press, he took the picture too. Now the Associated Press fed the picture immediately.
Oh.
Our pictures went in about, feeding a picture was also a complicated task. If you
Yes.
recall, at that time, you had to reach a post office and you had to. So the picture was fed. Now, AP got the photograph first, right, in London. So they got the picture and they just looked at the picture and said, "What have you fed? The Dalai Lama doesn't have a beard. What you have sent is a picture of a monk who has a beard. This is not the Dalai Lama."
They got the wrong picture.
They got the wrong picture.
Oh.
So the AP photography, you see, you're talking about an age where not much was available on the Dalai
That's
Lama,
true,
right?
yeah.
So it was hard to figure out which one is the Dalai Lama because there's so many monks
Yes.
who were coming in. So many, in the sense,
Yes.
over a dozen of them, and they were all in the same attire.
Uh-huh.
So even though the parent of ANI organization had the picture, he had the correct picture, he was a couple of minutes late, but because the AP photographer got the wrong picture,
Yeah.
we broke the story.
Oh.
So,
So it's a long story. So
Long story.
we have seen that picture over and over again.
correct.
So
Of that, so that is an ANI picture, or rather, it's now a Reuters picture, which was originally a Viz News picture, shot by the chairman of ANI.
my goodness.
Yeah, that's the history.
Oh, so and I can take full credit. And yes,
But I'm just saying,
congratulations to the chairman who
Yes.
got the photograph of the decade at that time.
Yeah. So at that time, it was like there were so many coming in and nobody knew for certain. But what he just tells us is that it was a historic moment when it was happening because nobody knew how this is going to go forward.
Yes.
Because you see, it was like China might take an aggressive posture now that the Dalai Lama has come in. And that anxiety continued for years together
Yeah. Even the escape.
from there. Yes.
It was called The Great Escape, right?
Yeah.
It was featured on the front page of the Time magazine.
Yeah.
It took for His Holiness around 14 days to cross from Lhasa all the way to the border of Arunachal Pradesh. So that's why me and my younger brother, we are going to Tawang into the border to retrack the steps and the movement of, His Holiness Dalai Lama and our late father, how they came to India. Now, that was a very painful story because His Holiness was 23 years old when finally he decided to flee because,
Yeah.
Chinese were bombing and killing hundreds and thousands of people in eastern part of Tibet. That's Amdo and Kham area, where my father's birthplace and another province where His Holiness Dalai Lama was born. So it's very painful. So His Holiness, he personally told me, it's also written in his autobiography. On the final day, he, goes round his room 3 times, praying that I will come back to his residence. And then, he disguises himself as a lay person and then escapes through because there are thousands of people protesting and guarding him, telling him, you should not go to the Chinese camp. Chinese military camp was inviting him for sure. And then he disguises himself, rides on a horse, and goes through where thousands of Tibetans were, and then escapes through. And then I'm cutting the story short, but then finally, when he climbs a hill, the person who was taking the horse of His Holiness tells His Holiness that this is the last spot from where you can see Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet, and your residence. And he gets off the horse and looks at his residence and the Lhasa capital city, and then prays that he come back. And then, then he will be met by 2 of the Shishuganduk guerrillas who were there to escort him. And immediately he asked them, "What are your names?" One said, "Tempa Tharke." In Tibetan means the Dharma will spread. Right? And what about others? Kunga something. Kunga means treasure. And then you say, wow. So it's good that two people I'm meeting. Of course, he is escorted by his whole entourage, but now two guerrillas were coming there. One is the Dharma will spread. That's a good sign. And then Tempa Tharke, so we won't be bad as far as money is also concerned. And then he rides the horse and treks over 13 days, and in between, he has, it is a very difficult journey, right? Riding on a horse. And then at one time, it's so difficult that he had to get zo, which is a mixture of yak and a cow, because they walk very smoothly up the hill down. So, and then His Holiness, as he comes to the border, and then, he told me, he felt some sense of relief.
This is border between Tibet and India.
At that time.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, right, I mean, you are a leader of Tibet. And then you're escaping. And then, in few times, actually, Chinese fighter planes, circulate around,
By this time, has the word got around that he's no longer in Lhasa?
Yes.
It has
After a few days, because, he left on the midnight of March 17th, and he reaches Bumla, Tawang area, on March 31st.
Tawang in India, Arunachal.
Tawang in
Okay.
Arunachal Pradesh,
Yeah, this is just, I'm just locating the places because there are some expat viewers who may not know the geography of this area. So I just explaining.
That's true. So, and then he says, as he sees the Indian, they were not prepared also, because another interesting part is that His Holiness was, escorted by two CIA-trained guerrillas who were equipped in sending messages. It's more like telegraph, but not advanced, all the way to Washington D.C.
Again, a little explainer for viewers who don't know that right from the time of British India days, Tibetans were trained in guerrilla warfare, and then even by Americans in the 1950s, they were trained. Tibetans were trained in guerrilla warfare in Nepal area, and then of course they were there in Tibet after that. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, in Nepal area, and that's later.
That
but
came
they
in
were trained. Yeah, they were
Tibet.
trained in 1956 on. They were trained in Camp Held in Colorado,
Okay.
Okinawa Island.
Yeah, Japan again.
And
yeah.
yes, and they were parachuted to Tibet, and these people used to inform. So Great Escape, everybody, was wondering, where is Dalai Lama? The rumor is that he's no more. Because then the Chinese started bombarding even his residence. So fortunately, he escaped. And then President Eisenhower, being from a military background, who had participated in World War, especially in Pacific, region, so he was very interested. So every morning, he used to say, "Where is Dalai Lama today?" So he had this map, and he used to put a pin, right? So I think 4 or 5 days prior, Eisenhower called Prime Minister Nehru and said, His Holiness Dalai Lama is coming to India. Because there were also, speculation whether he will go to Burma, which happens to a Buddhist country, or even Bhutan, or Sikkim, or Thailand, But then His Holiness did divination, and they all decided to come to India, in the land, or holy land of India, right, for us, is very special. And then, then India sent the welcoming group, and then that's the photograph.
So this welcoming group which was sent, which I have heard, which Mr. Prakash tells us, is that they kept moving them from different areas, so that nobody knows exactly from where he's coming. And even after coming, he was first acclimatized and kept in a tent. I don't know whether that is what your father told you, but I believe there was a lot of surreptitious activity which was done because there was security involved. So the Indian journalists, who had arrived, which included some Indians, some Americans who were shooting, were moved
Yes.
again and again, so that nobody really knows what they are shooting, when the Dalai Lama will come, how many will be with the Dalai Lama, if at all he will come today, tomorrow, day after. So there was a lot of that movement which was happening.
I'm sure it's all very likely because the communication is not
Yes.
as fast and
Correct.
efficient as now, and we have to do all this under secrecy because
Yeah.
you also didn't know the movement of Chinese troops.
Chinese, yes.
And the guerrillas, many of the Tibetan guerrillas who escorted him, many of them returned back to fight. So the His Holiness crossed over, and he says he felt relieved. Then he was just like to see, and there were like few menons and others, familiar faces, right? He's, oh, I'm safe now, And then he came to India, and then the famous photograph by the chairman of ANI, and he gives this press conference at Tejpur. And then, comes down to live in Mussoorie in Birla House, right? And after a few months, Indian government suggested that His Holiness and Tibetans, is interested, don't live in Mussoorie, but choose another place because Mussoorie is a popular tourist spot, and a lot of people could come and come to know. And then Tibetan delegation goes to Dharamsala. And then the head of the delegation comes back and says, the water of Dharamsala is, it tastes better than milk of Mussoorie. So that convinced them. So I don't know whether I've lived in Dharamsala for 10 years. Water tastes good, but not as good as milk of Mussoorie.
Also, it's prophetic, isn't it? That the guerrilla warrior who was with him was his dharma.
Yes.
And you found Dharamsala.
Yes.
There's maybe some act of God in that, who knows. But let's come back to your father now.
Again,
sorry.
It's just very good. A very good point. Lhasa means land of God, and we are in Dharamsala, a land of spirituality. So yes, in a way, it's karmic. It's
Karmic,
yes, definitely.
Do subscribe to the ANI Clips channel to get shorter versions of this podcast. Click here to watch the full episode.